Before the land ever learned their names, it had already decided their fate. Long before hands touched, before breath trembled against breath, before a single promise was spoken aloud, the dirt itself had begun to whisper warnings. The kind of warnings only the frontier gave, quiet, cruel, and impossible to outrun. This was not a story that began with hope. It began with a sunset that bled too red, and two souls who met when the world was already turning against them. The sun was dying slow over the frontier, sinking like a wounded animal behind the mesas. Its last light dragged long shadows across the dust-choked road, stretching men into ghosts and buildings into gravestones. The town at the edge of nowhere stood half forgotten, half broken, a scattering of timber and rust where dreams came to starve. Wind moved through it like a low prayer or a curse. He came in from the west, boots worn thin enough to feel every stone beneath them. Each step kicked up pale dust that clung to his trousers, his coat, his skin, as if the land itself was trying to claim him. He carried no rifle, no horse, just the weight of years that had already taken too much. A poor, broken cowboy. His shoulders sagged not from age, but from endurance, from surviving things that survival never truly forgave. His hat brim cast his face in shadow, but the lines of it were carved deep loss etched there by sun, hunger, and men who always had more power than mercy. He had learned long ago how to disappear inside himself, how to walk without expecting kindness, how to keep his eyes low so the world wouldn't ask questions he couldn't afford to answer. The town didn't greet him. It never did. Doors stayed shut. Windows reflected the dying light without curiosity. This place had seen too many men pass through carrying nothing but need, and then the wind changed, not stronger. Not louder, just different. It carried the faint scent of sage and smoke and something older than the town itself, something untouched by saloons and fences and laws written by men who believed land could be owned. He stopped walking, not because he knew why, only because something in his chest tightened sharp, sudden, like a warning bell rung inside bone. She stood at the far end of the street where the buildings gave way to open land, where wood surrendered to earth, where the town ended and the world remembered what it was before men tried to rename it. She was not meant to be there. That truth struck him before beauty ever did. She stood still, silhouetted against an ember-red sky, the dying sun framing her in fire and shadow. The wind moved her dark hair like a living thing, lifting strands and letting them fall again across her shoulders. Her dress was tribal, woven by hands that remembered meaning, not decoration, not fashion, but story. Every thread belonged. Her posture held quiet authority, not learned, not performed, inherited, as if the land itself had taught her how to stand. A tribal princess. He didn't know that yet. He only knew she wasn't like anyone this town had ever deserved. Her eyes met his across the distance, and the world shifted, not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough to feel dangerous. Her gaze didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't challenge. It simply held him, measured him, as if she were listening to something beneath his skin. He should have looked away. Men like him did not meet eyes with women like her, not in places like this, not with history standing between them like a loaded gun, but his body betrayed him before his will could catch up. He took one step closer. Dust whispered beneath his boots. She didn't move. Another step. The sun sank lower, turning the sky into a wound of red and gold. Long shadows stretched between them, binding their feet together long before their hands ever would. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally. His voice was low, rough, untended, a voice that hadn't been used much for kindness. She studied him as if deciding whether the warning belonged to her or to him. "This land doesn't belong to your town," she replied. Her voice carried no anger, just truth, clean and unafraid. He swallowed. "It doesn't belong to me either." That earned the slightest change in her expression. Not a smile, not yet, just a narrowing of the distance between curiosity and recognition. The wind lifted again, pressing the scent of her closer. Smoke, earth, something like rain remembered, "What brings you to the edge of a place that doesn't want you?" she asked. He exhaled through his nose a humorless breath. "Same thing that brings everyone, hunger or running." Her eyes didn't leave his face. "Which are you?" He considered lying. Men survived on lies out here. But something about the way dusk held them made falsehood feel heavier than truth. "Both," he said. Silence settled between them, thick but not empty, the kind of silence that listens back. She stepped closer. Just one step, but it shortened the space between them enough for him to notice the faint dust on her sandals, the fine scars on her hands, not from labor, but from living. "You carry sorrow," she said softly. It wasn't an accusation or pity. It was observation. He stiffened. People who look too closely tend to regret it. Her gaze didn't waver. People who don't look closely repeat mistakes. Another step. Her shadow touched his boot. He could feel her now, not physically, but something else. A pressure in his chest, a warmth and a warning tangled together. "You should go back," he said, "before night finishes falling. And if I don't," his jaw tightened, "then you'll be standing in a place where men forget themselves." She studied him again, slower this time. "Are you one of those men?" The question struck deeper than he expected. He answered honestly, "I've been worse." Something flickered in her eyes then, not fear, interest. The sun slipped lower, and firelight from the distant saloon windows flickered to life, weak against the gathering dark. The town began to breathe differently, louder, rougher. Her voice dropped. "You're afraid." He let out a bitter half-smile. "I've learned how of me," she asked, "of what wanting you might cost. That did it." A smile touched her lips, then brief, dangerous, and gone too fast to be safe. "Wanting always costs," she said. "The question is whether the price buys truth or regret." He had no answer. Only the awareness that his heart was already stepping somewhere his feet hadn't yet followed. A shout echoed from deeper in town, laughter, a bottle breaking, the night announcing itself. Her eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to him. "I should go," she said. He nodded, though every part of him resisted the idea. "You should." She turned, the movement graceful and final. But before she took more than 2 steps, she paused. "Cowboy," she said without looking back. He hadn't told her his name. "Yes. If you're still standing here when the last light leaves the sky, it means you chose." She walked away before he could ask what choice she meant. The wind followed her, pulling the warmth with it. He stood alone as dusk finished swallowing the land, and in the silence she left behind, the frontier smiled slow and cruel because it had seen this before. 2 paths crossing at the wrong hour. 2 hearts mistaking fire for fate, and a love that would not be allowed to stay innocent for long. Somewhere beyond the town, a drumbeat echoed faintly steady, distant like a heartbeat counting down. And though he did not know her name, though he did not know her past, though he did not yet know the betrayal written into the bones of this story, the land already did, and it never forgot. The night arrived without ceremony. No trumpet of stars, no grand announcement, just a slow cooling of the land as if the earth itself had exhaled after holding its breath too long. The ember-red sky dimmed to bruised violet, then to a black so wide it felt like falling upward. Silence settled over the plains, not the empty kind, the listening kind. They met again where no town could witness them, where fences gave up, and the ground remembered older footsteps. A small fire breathed between them, its glow rising and falling like a living thing. Sparks lifted, vanished, returned to ash. The same way hope did when held too tightly. He sat across from her, knees drawn close, hands rough and unsure of where to rest. Firelight carved him into shadow and copper, softened the hard lines just enough to remind him he was still human. She watched him, as if memorizing the way his sorrow leaned forward when he listened. Neither of them spoke at first. Words felt too loud for a sky this quiet. The wind brushed past, gentle now, carrying the low scent of dry grass and distant water. Somewhere beyond sight, a horse shifted its weight. Somewhere farther still, the land kept its secrets. He fed the fire a piece of broken wood. It cracked softly like a thought breaking open. "You didn't have to come," he said at last. She didn't look at the flames, neither did you. A pause, comfortable, dangerous. I thought you wouldn't, he admitted. I thought you'd disappear, she replied. They shared a small, knowing silence, the kind that only forms when two people recognize the same fear in each other. Firelight climbed her face, catching the curve of her cheek, the calm steadiness of her eyes. She looked softer here, away from the hard edge of dusk. Not weaker, just unguarded. You don't belong to that town, she said. He nodded. I've tried. She smiled faintly. That wasn't what I meant. The words landed warm, settled somewhere deep. He shifted closer to the fire, closer to her, close enough now to feel the heat from her skin when the wind changed. What do you belong to? He asked. She hesitated, not long, just enough for him to notice. The sky, she said finally, and the people who sleep beneath it. He didn't press. He had learned that truths offered freely carried more weight than those dragged into daylight. I don't have much, he said instead. No land, no name worth remembering. She studied him. Names can be reclaimed. And land, she glanced at the horizon, where darkness folded into darkness. Land remembers who loves it. He laughed quietly, a sound unused to itself. You speak like someone who's never had to beg the earth for mercy. Her gaze softened. You speak like someone who has. The fire popped. A spark leapt toward the sky, died midair. She drew her knees closer, the movement small, instinctive. He noticed the way her hands bore faint scars, not the brutal kind, but the patient ones. Time, tradition, responsibility. Tell me something true. She said. He didn't answer right away. The night felt heavy with listening. I buried a friend once, he said, out past the dry riverbed. Couldn't afford a marker, just stones. I still visit, even though I don't know if it matters. She watched him as if the story were sacred. It matters because you remember, he nodded. What about you? She looked down at her hands, the fire reflected there, trembling. I learned early how to be quiet, she said, how to let others decide which parts of me were allowed to be seen. That doesn't sound like you, he said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It is. Silence returned thicker now, threaded with understanding. The night deepened. Stars emerged slowly, cautiously, like witnesses, unsure whether to stay. The fire burned lower, glow replacing flame. He reached for another piece of wood, then stopped. May I? He asked. She looked at his hand, then at his face. Yes. He took her hand gently, as if it might vanish if held too firmly. Her skin was warm, alive. The contact sent a quiet shock through him, not lightning, but something steadier, something that said stay. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm upward, fitting her hand more fully into his. The world narrowed, the fire, their breath, the sound of blood remembering its purpose. I shouldn't want this, he said softly. She answered just as quietly, neither should I. Their fingers intertwined. Not rushed, not desperate, intentional. The wind sighed across the plains, carrying the sound of distant drums, faint enough to be mistaken for heartbeat. She leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. He felt the weight of that contact settle, grounding him. You're afraid of tomorrow, she said. I'm afraid of ruining this, he replied, her head tilted slightly toward him. Some things are ruined only by refusing to live them. He turned to face her. Their foreheads nearly touched. Firelight painted her lashes gold. What aren't you telling me? He asked. The question was gentle, but it landed sharp. Her breath caught just for a moment. There are things, she said slowly, that cannot be spoken without changing everything. He nodded. I know. She searched his face, as if weighing the cost of honesty against the cost of silence. I want to know you, she said instead. Not the broken parts only, all of it. He swallowed. There isn't much else. There's always more, she said. Men hide it better than they believe. She shifted closer still, resting her head briefly against his shoulder. The contact sent warmth through him, deep and aching. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the night did not feel like something to survive. Minutes passed, or hours. Time loosened its grip. He spoke quietly, words unraveling without effort. About drifting from job to job. About learning how to leave before being left. about nights where hunger taught patience and pride learned to kneel. She listened, always listening. She shared too carefully. Stories shaped like fragments. Childhood laughter near water. Songs learned before language hardened them. A responsibility placed upon her shoulders early, heavy as stone. But when his questions drifted toward the present, she turned them aside. He noticed, not the lie, the absence. Still, he did not force it. Love, he was learning, was not possession. It was permission. The fire collapsed into coals. Red light pulsed softly, like a heart nearing rest. He brushed his thumb across the back of her hand, slow, reverent. "If I asked you to stay," he said, "would you?" She looked up at the sky. Stars crowded there now, relentless in their witness. "I already am," she said. The answer carried truth and something else, something unresolved. They leaned together then, foreheads touching, breath shared. No kiss yet, just the promise of one hovering, unbearable. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. She closed her eyes. "Then don't leave." The words struck deeper than any vow. Somewhere far off, a coyote cried. The sound echoed, lonely and beautiful. He pressed his forehead more firmly to hers. "Stay with me tonight." She hesitated again, just long enough for fate to take note. "Yes," she whispered. They lay side by side beneath the open sky, fire dying beside them. Not touching at first, then slowly, inevitably, drawn together by the quiet gravity of wanting. His arm curved around her. She fit against him as if shaped by the same question. Above them, the stars watched without judgment. Below them, the land remembered. And in the space where truth had not yet been spoken, love bloomed tender, fragile, and already in danger. Because some silences are not empty. They are full of names that cannot be said. The sky no longer opened itself to them the way it once had. Clouds gathered low over the plains, dulling the stars until they looked like memories instead of promises. The night pressed down heavier now, thick with a silence that no longer felt gentle. Even the wind had changed its voice, restless, circling, as if searching for something it could not find. They still met beneath the open sky, still shared firelight, still spoke in lowered voices meant only for each other. But something had shifted. Not in the way she looked at him that warmth remained. Not in the way her hand found his in the dark that tenderness still lived. The change was quieter than that, slower. Like a hairline crack in stone that only time could widen. He noticed it first in her absences, not long ones, not dramatic. Just moments where she should have been near and wasn't. A fire built too early. Tracks beside their camp that were not his. The way her gaze sometimes drifted beyond him, toward the dark horizon, as if listening for a sound he could not hear. "You're quiet tonight," he said once, feeding the fire while thunder muttered somewhere far away. She smiled, but it arrived late. "So are you." He studied her face in the flickering light. The fire could no longer decide what to reveal and what to hide. Shadows clung to her eyes. "I'm listening," he said. To what? To what you're not saying." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of rain and something else, smoke from a direction that wasn't theirs. She turned her face away. "Not everything is meant to be shared all at once." He nodded slowly. "I know, I just don't want to be the last to know." Her shoulders tensed, just slightly, enough. The thunder rolled again, closer now, its low voice echoing across the plains like a warning clearing its throat. They sat in silence, firelight trembling between them. He remembered the way she had first looked at him at dusk, steady, unafraid. Tonight her eyes moved more, watched the dark, counted the seconds between sounds. "Is someone looking for you?" he asked. The question slipped out before he could soften it. Her head lifted sharply. "Why would you ask that?" He held her gaze. "Because you keep listening." She studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed, not in relief, but in resignation. "There are expectations," she said carefully, "placed on me long before I understood what they would cost." His jaw tightened. "Do those expectations have a face?" The thunder answered for her, cracking louder now, closer, rattling the bones of the land. She stood, wrapping her shawl tighter around herself. Storm's coming. He rose too, following her movement. So is something else. She turned to him, eyes dark now, guarded. Don't ask questions you don't truly want answered. The words struck harder than any confession could have. I want the truth, he said. Truth isn't always kind. Neither is doubt. Rain began to fall light at first, tentative, like the sky testing them. The fire hissed softly. She stepped away from him, just enough to feel like distance. You're afraid, she said. Yes, he replied, because I don't know who I'm standing against. She closed her eyes. For a moment, he thought she might finally say it, whatever it was that lived behind her silence. Whatever shape her shadow took. Instead, she said, some battles exist whether you name them or not. Rain strengthened, drumming against earth and skin. The fire struggled, then surrendered, leaving only smoke and embers. They retreated beneath a low canvas shelter, the space suddenly too small for what filled it. He watched her by the dim glow of dying coals, the way her hands trembled as she tied loose fabric, the way her breath came shallow, controlled. You've been carrying this alone, he said quietly. She met his eyes. I didn't choose to. Then let me carry it with you. Her lips parted, closed again. You can't, she said. The finality in her voice cut deep. Outside, rain washed the dust into dark rivulets, erasing tracks or hiding them. That night she did not sleep beside him, not far, just turned away, a space between their bodies where warmth used to live. He stared into the darkness, listening to the rain, to her breathing, to the sound of something approaching that had no name yet. Morning brought no clarity. The storm passed, leaving the land scrubbed and raw. Clouds hung low, dragging their shadows across the plains. The air smelled clean, too clean, like aftermath. She moved through the morning with quiet purpose, gathering things, avoiding his eyes. Where are you going? He asked. Just for a while, she replied. His chest tightened. You say that more often now. She paused. And you hear it differently. That was true. He watched her walk away, her figure dissolving into mist and distance. Each step felt like a small betrayal, though he didn't know why. He spent the day restless, pacing the edge of their camp, eyes scanning the horizon. The land felt crowded now, though no one else was visible. Late afternoon brought wind again, sharp, uneasy. It carried voices this time, not words, just tones, low, male. He stiffened. The sound faded quickly, swallowed by distance, but it left something behind. A pressure, a certainty. That night, when she returned, her hair carried the scent of smoke that was not theirs. He noticed. He always noticed. Did you find what you were looking for? He asked. She hesitated. I found what I needed to. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Was he there? The question fell heavy between them. Her eyes widened not in anger but in fear. You shouldn't say that, she whispered. Why? He demanded. Because it's true. Silence. That was answer enough. The fire cracked loudly, a sudden violence that made her flinch. Who is he? He asked. She shook her head. It isn't that simple. Then make it simple, he said. Say his name. She looked at him, then really looked, and he saw it, the conflict, the fracture, the truth pressing against her ribs. I can't, she said. The words landed like a verdict. He stepped back as if struck. Is he yours? Her breath hitched. He was chosen. The wind howled through the camp, whipping sparks into the dark. Chosen by who? He asked, voice low and dangerous. By tradition, she said. By obligation, by love. She didn't answer. That silence was louder than thunder. He turned away, staring out into the night where shadows layered upon shadows. Another man, somewhere out there. Waiting, claiming, existing, an invisible rival with a name the land already knew. Behind him, her voice broke. I didn't plan this. He faced her again, pain sharp in his eyes. Neither did I. They stood apart now, firelight flickering between them like a failing heartbeat. I care for you, she said, deeply. His laugh was bitter. Care doesn't haunt you like this. She stepped toward him, reaching out. He didn't take her hand. Every promise feels thinner now, he said. Every word carries weight it didn't before. Tears shone in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" he asked. "From what loving me demands." The wind answered again, whispering through grass and bone. That night, sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought dreams of faceless men standing between them, hands stained with history. By morning, doubt had taken root, and though love still burned bright, stubborn it now burned beside something else. Something darker, something waiting to step fully into the light. Dawn came without warmth. It slid across the land like a blade, pale and unfeeling, cutting through the fog that lay low over the plains. The world emerged slowly, reluctantly, as if it already knew what the light was about to reveal. The fire from the night before had collapsed into gray ash. No embers, no glow. Just the cold remains of something that once promised heat. He stood alone at the edge of the camp, breath fogging the air, boots sinking slightly into damp earth. The silence felt heavier than darkness ever had. Even the wind had withdrawn, leaving the plains unnaturally still, gunmetal quiet, waiting. He hadn't slept. Every time his eyes closed, the same feeling returned that something had already been decided without him. That while he stood holding hope with both hands, another truth was riding toward him, unburdened by mercy. The fog thinned just enough for shapes to form, movement. At first, he thought it was just the land waking, shadows stretching, distance reshaping itself. Then he heard it, hoofbeats, slow, measured. Certain, his spine tightened. One rider emerged first, then another, then a third. Dark silhouettes cutting through the mist like ghosts refusing to stay buried. They rode with purpose, not urgency. Men who did not fear what waited ahead. The lead rider dismounted before reaching the camp. He was tall, broad, shouldered, wrapped in leather and tradition. His presence bent the air around him, heavy with authority earned long before this morning. Behind him, 2 others remained mounted, silent witnesses. The cowboy didn't move. He knew then, not the details, not the names, but the truth of it, sharp and undeniable, settled into his chest like a stone dropped into deep water. She stepped out of the fog moments later. Her face was pale, drawn tight, as if sleep had never touched her either. Her eyes went first to the rider, then to the man she loved. The pause between those 2 looks was everything. The lead rider spoke her name, not loudly, not cruelly, but with a familiarity that cut deeper than anger ever could. Her shoulders stiffened. "You're alive," she said. The words were barely a breath. The rider nodded once. "I was never gone, only delayed." The cowboy felt the world tilt. Alive. The word echoed, hollow and final. The man stepped closer. The fog parted around him as if recognizing its own. "I was told you'd been seen near the borderlands," he said. "That you were. Wandering." His eyes shifted then finally to the cowboy, and the air changed. This was no stranger measuring another man. This was ownership colliding with intrusion, history facing trespass. "Who is he?" the rider asked. She didn't answer immediately. That hesitation was the last kindness she ever gave him. "This," she said carefully, "is the man I told you about." The cowboy let out a slow breath. "You didn't tell me about him." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't know how." The rider's gaze sharpened. "Told you about me." She looked at the ground. The fog lifted further, revealing the hard lines of the land, the unforgiving clarity of morning. No shadows left to hide in. "I was presumed dead," the rider said. "The raid took many. I was injured, taken far from home." He stepped closer still, his presence undeniable now. "But I returned," he continued, "as the law demands, as honor requires." The cowboy finally spoke. His voice came low, steady, stripped of illusion. "What law?" he asked. The rider met his gaze without flinching. "The law that bound her to me before she ever learned how to refuse." The words landed like a gunshot. Her head snapped up. Don't what?" the rider replied calmly. "Speak truth." The cowboy turned to her. His eyes searched her face not for denial but for mercy. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me he's lying." Her lips trembled. Silence answered. The rider's voice carried again. "She is my wife." The word wife echoed across the plains, swallowed by fog, returned heavier. The cowboy staggered back a step, as if struck physically. No, he said, you said chosen, you said obligation. She took a step toward him, desperation breaking through control. I never said I was free. The rider watched them with cold understanding. Love does not dissolve law. The cowboy laughed a sharp, broken sound. You let me believe, I let myself believe. She interrupted, tears finally spilling, that maybe fate had spared me. The rider's jaw tightened. Fate does not spare, it collects. The fog continued to lift, exposing them fully now, three figures bound in a triangle of truth and ruin. How long? The cowboy asked her. She closed her eyes. Since before you. The words crushed what remained. Then every night, he said slowly, every promise, every silence, was a lie, she whispered. He nodded once, yes. She reached for him. He stepped back. Don't, he said. Her hand fell to her side. The rider moved between them then, not aggressively, but decisively. A man restoring order where chaos had briefly lived. She belongs with me, he said. The cowboy's eyes burned. Belonging isn't love. The rider's gaze hardened. Love is irrelevant when blood and law are written together. The cowboy turned away, staring into the pale horizon. The sun rose reluctantly now, offering no warmth. You should have told me, he said, before my heart learned your name. Her voice broke completely. I was afraid you'd look at me like this. He faced her again. His expression was hollow. I'm not looking at you, he said. I'm looking at what's left. The rider signaled to the men behind him. They dismounted, forming a quiet perimeter, not threatening, but final. We leave now, the rider said. She returns with me. The cowboy felt something tear inside his chest, not loudly, but completely. You're just taking her, he asked. She was never yours to lose. The rider replied. She cried out then, stepping forward. I chose him. The rider turned sharply. You chose confusion. She stood her ground. I chose love. Silence fell hard. The rider looked at her, really looked, and something like sorrow passed through his eyes before discipline reclaimed its place. You chose betrayal, he said, of me, of our people, of yourself. The cowboy felt the weight of it then, not just personal loss, but moral collapse. The world he thought he understood had revealed its bones. Go, he said to her. She shook her head. I can't leave you like this. You already did. The words ended it. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly, restrained by years of being taught when grief was allowed. The rider extended his hand to her. After a long moment, she took it. That motion sealed everything. The cowboy watched as she stepped away from him, every step a tearing sound only he could hear. The fog thinned until nothing remained between them but clear, brutal distance. Before mounting, she turned back once. I loved you, she said. He didn't answer. The rider mounted. The others followed. Hoofbeats resumed slow, measured, final. As they disappeared into the pale distance, the cowboy stood alone amid the ruins of mourning. The land watched without judgment. Love had not saved him. Truth had not freed her. Honor had chosen its side, and as the sun finally cleared the horizon, it revealed a man standing in the aftermath of something sacred that had never been allowed to live. The frontier did not apologize. It never did. The sun rose higher, cruel and unblinking. By midday, it had burned away the softness of morning and replaced it with something sharper. The land hardened beneath its gaze. Dust lifted in pale sheets, dragged across the plains by a wind that no longer whispered it accused. He rode now, not away, not toward salvation, but toward the ache that refused to stay buried. His horse moved under him with nervous energy, hooves striking dry earth like a countdown. Each step carried him deeper into a heat that pressed against his skin and into his bones, the kind of heat that stripped a man of patience and left only truth behind. He had tried to stay still after they left, tried to let silence finish what betrayal had started. But stillness only sharpened the images, her hand in another man's grip, the word wife spoken without mercy, the way honor had closed its fist around her throat and called it duty. The dust storm rose ahead of him like a living thing. He rode into it without slowing. Visibility collapsed to nothing. Wind tore at his coat, filled his mouth with grit, burned his eyes until tears came uninvited. The world reduced itself to motion and fury fitting, somehow, for what lived inside his chest. He didn't know when he crossed into their territory, only that the land changed its posture, less broken timber. More intention, stones arranged not by accident but memory, trails worn not by commerce but generations. The storm thinned as suddenly as it had risen, and there they were. The camp stood against the harsh light like a wound that refused to close. Tents stretched low and wide, anchored by ropes pulled tight with purpose. Fires burned despite the wind, guarded by men who did not look up in surprise, only in recognition. He dismounted slowly. Every eye found him. Not hostility, assessment. The princess stood near the central fire. The sun carved her into sharp relief, no shadows left to hide behind. Her face was tight with restraint, jaw set hard enough to crack stone. She looked older here, heavier, like the weight she carried had finally claimed its space. Their eyes met. Something flared, not hope, not forgiveness, but recognition of shared damage. He took one step forward. A hand landed on his chest, firm, controlled. The husband, up close. The man was broader than he remembered, presence reinforced by the certainty of belonging. His gaze was steady, unblinking, sharpened by pride and something darker, humiliation still fresh. "You shouldn't be here," the man said. The cowboy's voice came low, restrained with effort. "Neither should she." The princess inhaled sharply. "Stop." The husband didn't remove his hand. "You trespass." "I wandered," the cowboy replied. "Same way she did." That earned a flicker of anger. "You wandered into my marriage," the husband said, "into my name." The cowboy stepped closer, forcing the man's hand away with his chest alone. "You don't own what doesn't love you." A ripple moved through the camp. Men shifted, hands hovered near weapons. The princess stepped between them. "Enough." Her voice cracked like a whip. They both stilled. She turned to the cowboy, eyes blazing. "Why did you come?" His jaw clenched. "Because I wasn't finished bleeding." The words landed hard. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, resolve replaced the fracture. "You shouldn't have followed us," she said. "This only deepens the wound." "I didn't follow," he said. "I stood where I was left and the pain came looking for me." The husband laughed once, sharp, humorless. "Pain is the cost of forgetting one's place." The cowboy's gaze snapped to him. "You talk about place like it's a kindness." "It's survival," the man replied. "Without it, nothing holds. Except fear." The cowboy shot back. The air tightened. The sun beat down harder, scorching patience from every face. Dust rose again, curling around their boots like smoke. The husband turned to the princess. "You will return to our tent." She didn't move. His eyes narrowed. "Now." She lifted her chin. "I need to speak." With him, his voice cut. "You've spoken enough." The cowboy stepped back, fists clenched, jaw locked to keep words from spilling out like fire. She turned to her husband slowly. "If you claim honor," she said, "then grant me truth." The man stared at her. For a moment, something raw surface betrayal mirrored in his eyes, pride cracking under the weight of being exposed. "Speak," he said, "then we end this." She faced the cowboy. The distance between them felt wider than the plains. "I never meant to shame you," she said, "or him. I thought the world had taken him from me." Her voice broke, then steadied. "And when you appeared, when you looked at me like I wasn't already spoken for by ghosts and laws, I wanted to believe it was mercy." The cowboy swallowed. "So I was mercy, you were life," she said, "when mine felt decided without me." The husband flinched. "And what am I?" he demanded. "The jailer." She met his gaze. "You are the vow I never chose." The camp erupted in murmurs. The husband's face darkened. "Careful." "No," she said, "I've been careful my entire life." The cowboy watched, heart hammering, torn between wanting to pull her away and knowing that doing so would damn them both. "You humiliated me," the husband said, voice shaking with restrained fury, "before my people, before the land." She stepped closer to him. "And you vanished. You left me to mourn you while they decided my fate." Silence slammed down. The husband's breath came heavy. "I was wounded, taken. I know," she said, "and I waited." I waited until waiting became another form of obedience. The cowboy felt rage surge not just for himself, but for the way both of them were trapped inside something larger and crueler than love. "Every oath burns now," he said quietly, because none of them were spoken free. The husband turned to him sharply. "You have no right, I have every right." The cowboy snapped. "I loved her without claiming her, without owning her, without law or blood to hide behind." A hand grabbed the cowboy's shoulder from behind, another from the side. The husband raised a hand. "Release him." They obeyed. He stepped closer to the cowboy until their foreheads nearly touched. "You think love absolves you?" "No," the cowboy said. "But it condemns you if you ignore it." The sun glared overhead, merciless. Sweat ran down backs. Dust clung to skin like judgment. The princess stood trembling between them, breath shallow, torn open by truths that refused to stay buried. "There will be consequences," the husband said. "I know," she replied. "That's why I spoke." The cowboy looked at her, then really looked, and saw the cost etched into every line of her face. "What do you want?" he asked her. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears ran freely, unashamed. "I want to stop destroying everyone I touch." The words cut deeper than rejection. The husband exhaled slowly. "You will return with me. We will decide this according to law. And if the law demands blood," the cowboy asked. The husband's gaze hardened. "Then blood will answer." The cowboy nodded once. "Then so will I." A challenge, not shouted, accepted. The wind surged, dragging dust into the air, wrapping the camp in a veil of brown and gold. The sun dimmed behind it, casting the world into a fevered haze. The princess reached out, grasping the cowboy's sleeve. "Please." He looked down at her hand, then at her face. "I would burn the world for you," he said. "But I won't let it pretend that fire is justice." He stepped back. The distance returned wider now, heavier. As he mounted his horse, the camp watched in silence. No cheers, no threats. Just the understanding that something had been set in motion that could not be recalled. He turned once more. "This ends one way or another," he said, "but it will end honest." The husband nodded. "Honor will decide." The princess stood between them, hands empty, heart split open, knowing that whatever came next would demand more than love. As the cowboy rode away, dust swallowed him whole. Behind him, oaths smoldered. Ahead of him, consequences waited. And beneath the merciless sun, the frontier prepared to collect its due. The sky darkened before the storm arrived. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a slow bruising of light, as if the heavens themselves were weighing what they were about to witness and found it heavy. Clouds stacked low over the plains, thick and swollen, dragging their bellies across the horizon. Thunder muttered far off, not yet angry, just awake. The air tasted of iron and rain, of something about to be taken back. The frontier had reached its limit. They gathered where the land widened, and the ground dipped into a shallow basin, a place used for judgment long before fences pretended to matter. Stones formed a rough circle, worn smooth by generations of feet and verdicts. Fires burned low despite the wind, their smoke bending sideways, unwilling to rise. The cowboy arrived first. He dismounted slowly, movements deliberate, as if rushing would cheapen what came next. His coat was dark with dust and sweat, hat pulled low, jaw set hard enough to break teeth. He carried no rifle in his hands, though one rested across his back. He had come not to hunt, but to be seen. Rain began as a whisper, scattered drops darkening the earth like stains. He stood alone at the center of the basin, boots planted, shoulders squared. Around him, the land felt expectant, breath held, waiting for the truth to choose a shape. Thunder rolled closer. They came from the east. Hoofbeats arrived in pairs, then many. Riders emerged through the falling rain, silhouettes fractured by lightning that tore the sky open in white veins. At their head rode the husband, posture rigid, authority worn like armor. His face was unreadable, now anger tempered into resolve. Beside him rode the princess. Her hair was braided tight, ceremonial, rain threading silver through the dark. Her face was pale, eyes steady, lips pressed together as if every word she had left was being held back by force alone. She did not look at the cowboy when she dismounted. Not yet. Elders followed, men whose eyes carried history deeper than any scar. Their presence anchored the gathering, pulling it out of passion and into law. The rain strengthened, drumming against skin and stone, flattening dust into mud. The basin darkened, earth turning slick and heavy underfoot. "This place is called for truth," one elder said, voice carrying without effort. "Let it be spoken." Silence fell, the thunder waited, the husband stepped forward first. "I was bound to her before witnesses, before blood, before the law of our people." His voice was strong, practiced. "I vanished in violence, not choice. When I returned, I found my name broken in my own home." Murmurs stirred. He turned, pointing toward the cowboy. This man knew she was spoken for. The cowboy lifted his chin. "I knew she was burdened, not bound by love." A flash of lightning split the sky, followed by thunder close enough to rattle bone. The elder's gaze settled on the cowboy. "You speak carefully." "I speak honestly," the cowboy replied. "I did not steal. I was given moments she never owned." The princess flinched. The husband laughed once, bitter. Moments built on lies. She stepped forward then, rain soaking her clothes, washing dust from her skin like a stripping away. "I lied," she said. The words cut clean through the basin. Every head turned. "I lied by omission, by silence, by hoping fate would finish what I was too afraid to name." Her voice trembled but did not break. "I believed him dead. I mourned him. I accepted a life chosen for me in grief, and when love appeared I took it like a starving thing." The husband's jaw tightened. "You took what was not yours." She faced him fully. "I took what made me remember I was alive." Thunder roared, immediate and violent. The elder raised a hand. "The law is not blind to pain, but it does not bow to it." The rain fell harder, soaking hair and skin, blurring edges. The world narrowed to breathe and heartbeat. "What judgment do you seek?" the elder asked the husband. The man didn't hesitate. "Restoration, honor." "And how is honor restored?" the elder pressed. The husband's eyes flicked to the cowboy. "Blood answers blood." A ripple ran through the circle. The cowboy nodded once. "If that's the cost, I won't hide from it." The princess turned sharply. "No." Her voice cracked through the rain. "This is my sin, not his." The elder regarded her. "You stand between law and consequence." "I stand between men who would bleed to avoid facing what broke them," she replied. Silence swallowed the thunder. The husband stared at her, really stared, and something fragile flickered beneath his anger. "You shamed me. I was never yours to display," she said softly. The rain slowed, thick drops striking the ground like counted seconds. The elder stepped forward. "There is another path." All eyes turned. "Truth may be paid in loss instead of blood." The elder said, "But it must be complete." The cowboy spoke first, "Then let it be." The elder turned to the princess. "You choose this man." He gestured to the cowboy. She closed her eyes. The moment stretched, unbearable. "I choose honesty," she said. The answer hung, unsatisfying to everyone and devastating to all. "I cannot erase my marriage," she continued, "nor can I deny my love." The husband inhaled sharply, pain breaking through restraint. "You choose disgrace." "I choose consequence," she replied. Lightning flashed again, illuminating faces streaked with rain and truth. The elder nodded slowly, "Then hear it." The storm seemed to lean closer. "The marriage stands by law," the elder said, "but it is broken by truth. It will not be repaired by force." The husband stiffened. "You strip me of honor." "No," the elder replied. "You are stripped by reality." The man's fists clenched, and him. The elder turned to the cowboy. "You are guilty of trespass against bond." The cowboy nodded. "I accept it." "Your punishment is exile from these lands," the elder said, "permanent." The word exile struck harder than any blade. The princess gasped. "No." The elder raised a hand. "And you," he said to her, "will bear the weight of your choice before your people." Her shoulders slumped. as if something finally settled into place. "I will." The husband laughed, then broken, hollow. "So this is justice." Thunder answered him, close enough to shake the ground. A sudden movement shattered the stillness. One of the husband's men stepped forward, rage overriding order. A gun flashed in his hand, metal gleaming wet and wild. The sound cracked the world open. Gunfire echoed, violent and final. The cowboy moved without thinking, body reacting before mind. He shoved the princess aside as the shot tore through the air, splintering stone where she had stood. Chaos erupted. Another shot rang out, then another. Shouts, horses rearing, rain turning the ground slick and treacherous. The husband drew his weapon, not toward the cowboy, but toward his own man. Stand down, too late. The cowboy fired once a single, deliberate shot. The man fell, blood darkening the mud, rain trying and failing to wash it away. Silence crashed down heavier than thunder. Smoke curled from the barrel. The cowboy lowered the gun slowly, chest heaving. The princess stared at the fallen body, horror carved into her face. "What have I done?" The elder's voice cut through. "Enough." The husband knelt beside his fallen man, hands shaking as he pressed them against the wound that could not be closed. His shoulders bowed, pride finally broken under the weight of consequence. He looked up at the cowboy, eyes burning. "You took more than my wife." The cowboy's voice was hoarse. "I took what was already lost." Rain soaked them all, relentless, impartial. The elder spoke again. "Blood has been paid. Judgment stands." The storm began to ease, thunder retreating into distance like a beast satisfied for now. The cowboy stepped back, lowering his weapon fully. He met the princess's eyes across the basin. There were no words left that wouldn't lie. She walked toward him through the mud, stopped just short. "I never meant for this," she whispered. "I know." He said, "That doesn't change it." Her tears mixed with rain. "They're sending you away." He nodded. "The land will remember." She reached out, stopped herself. "I will remember too." He held her gaze, pain and love braided tight. "That may be worse." Behind them, the husband rose slowly, grief hollowing him out. "Go," he said to the cowboy, "before I forget what restraint costs." The cowboy inclined his head not in defeat but in acknowledgement. He mounted his horse as the rain thinned to mist. The basin watched him go, marked by blood, truth, and judgment. No one was unchanged. The storm passed. What it left behind would never wash clean. The land had already decided how this love would end. Long before their eyes ever met, before a word was spoken, before the wind carried his scent to her or her shadow crossed his path, the land had marked them both for loss. Dusk came down like a slow execution. The dying sun bled across the desert sky, ember-red and bruised purple, stretching long shadows that clung to the earth like regret. The frontier town at the edge of nowhere sat half, wallowed by sand and silence, its wooden bones creaking as if remembering better days. Doors stayed shut, windows watched, even the horses knew to stand still. A poor, broken cowboy walked alone through it all. His boots were cracked, soles worn thin by miles that never led anywhere worth keeping. Dust clung to his coat like a second skin, and the weight of the day pressed down on his shoulders heavier than his rifle ever had. He moved the way men moved when life had taken more than it gave, slow, careful, as if one wrong step might shatter what little remained. The desert wind followed him, whispering low and constant, telling stories no one wanted to hear anymore. He had no reason to stop in this town, no money to spend, no name anyone would remember, but the light was fading, and even a broken man needed shelter before night swallowed the plains whole. That was when he saw her. She stood near the edge of town where the sand met the first stubborn buildings, caught between wilderness and wood, between worlds that were never meant to touch. The sun framed her in fire, turning her silhouette into something unreal, almost holy. Long dark hair stirred gently in the wind, catching streaks of copper light. Her presence bent the air around her, made the silence lean closer. She was not meant to be there. He knew it instantly, the way a man knows when he's already lost. Her clothing spoke of another life, carefully made, deliberate, carrying meaning beyond survival. Beaded patterns rested against worn fabric, colors dulled by travel but never erased. She stood straight, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on the horizon as if waiting for something she prayed would never arrive. A tribal princess. The word surfaced uninvited, dangerous in its certainty. This land had rules older than fences and sharper than knives. Boundaries were drawn in blood and memory, and crossing them came with consequences no one escaped. Men like him did not speak to women like her. They did not look too long, they did not step closer, but dusk has a way of breaking rules. He slowed without meaning to. His shadow stretched toward hers, thin and reaching, like it wanted something his body had already forgotten how to ask for. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of sage and smoke from her direction. It curled into his chest, settled somewhere deep and stayed. She turned. The moment cracked open like a gunshot in his chest. Her eyes met his dark, searching, older than they should have been. They held strength and something quieter beneath it, something careful and bruised. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to the space between them. No town, no desert, no laws, just two souls standing at the edge of something neither could afford. She did not look away. That alone was dangerous. He tipped his hat slightly, more reflex than intention, the old manners rising even when the rest of him had learned to stay buried. His mouth opened, then closed. Words felt too loud for the way the light was dying. Evening, he said finally, voice rough, as if it hadn't been used for anything gentle in a long time. Her gaze lingered, measuring him, weighing something he could not see. When she spoke, her voice was low and steady, shaped by a language that lived in the land itself. Evening, she replied, one word, enough to change everything. The sun slipped lower, the sky darkening at the edges, and the town seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere a shutter creaked. Somewhere else a dog whined and went silent. The wind whispered again, sharper now, warning them both. He should have kept walking. He knew that. Every lesson pain had ever taught him screamed it clear. But his feet stayed planted, and his eyes betrayed him, tracing the line of her face, the quiet resolve in her posture, the way she stood as if she belonged to the horizon itself. You shouldn't be out here alone, he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Her mouth curved, not a smile, not quite, but something close enough to hurt. Neither should you. Fair enough. They stood there, dusk swallowing the last of the light, and the distance between them felt smaller than the weight of what lay beyond it. He could sense her caution, feel it in the way her hands rested near her sides, ready but calm. This was a woman who had learned to guard herself without appearing guarded at all. What brings you this far from your people? He asked, then cursed himself the moment the words left his mouth. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, a flicker of steel beneath the calm. What makes you think I'm far from them? He swallowed. Call it a guess. Silence settled again, thick and loaded. The sky burned its last orange breath before slipping toward night. In that fading light, her expression softened, not in trust but in recognition. Two wanderers, both standing where they didn't belong. I'm waiting, she said. For what? She hesitated, just a fraction too long. For night. The answer sent a quiet chill through him. Night on the frontier was not forgiving. It revealed truths men spent their lives hiding. It carried decisions you could never take back. You got somewhere safe to be? He asked. Her gaze drifted past him, toward the endless stretch of plains beyond the town. Safety is a matter of perspective. The wind rose, tugging at her hair, pulling it loose around her shoulders. He noticed how she didn't push it back right away, how her attention stayed locked on him as if daring him to look away first. I can walk you, he said. The offer hovered between them, reckless and sincere. She studied him again, slower this time, eyes tracing the wear in his coat. The scars time had etched into his face. A man who had survived, but barely. A man who had nothing left to lose, and that made him the most dangerous kind. No, she said softly, you shouldn't. He nodded, accepting it, though something in his chest tightened all the same. Probably right. Still, neither moved. The town faded into shadow behind them, and the desert ahead turned blue and endless. Crickets began their chorus, a soft, relentless rhythm that matched the pulse in his veins. He became acutely aware of how close she stood now, how the space between them had narrowed without either remembering who stepped first. "Your name?" he asked, another pause, longer this time. She could lie. He would never know. Names carried power out here, and giving one to a stranger was its own kind of surrender. "Anaya," she said at last. The sound of it settled into him, warm and dangerous. "It suits you." Her eyes flickered again, surprise this time, quickly masked. "And yours?" He hesitated. Names had never brought him much good. But dusk had already stripped him of caution. "Illy," he said, just Illy. The wind sighed as if amused. They stood there, names hanging between them like a fragile bridge. The sky darkened fully now, stars beginning to pierce the velvet above. Somewhere beyond sight, a coyote called out, lonely and aching. "You should go," she said quietly. He nodded again, though his feet still refused to listen. "You too." For a moment, he thought she might turn away first. That would have been easier, but she held his gaze, eyes reflecting the first stars, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding as old as the land itself. This was wrong. This was inevitable. She took a step back, the spell loosening but not breaking. "Good night, Illy." "Good night, Anaya." She turned then, moving toward the open plains with a grace that made his chest ache. Each step carried her farther from him, deeper into a world he was never meant to touch. He watched until the darkness swallowed her whole, until only the whisper of her presence remained. Only then did he breathe. The town felt emptier somehow, the shadows longer, the silence louder. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him, that this was not an ending. It was a beginning already stained with blood and law and consequence. As he finally turned away, the wind followed him again, whispering secrets into his ear. Love, it said, was already cursed, and the land would make them pay.